Morning everyone. Okay,
Morning.
so you all know the gist. It's going to be 21 questions. We're going to start by walking on that side of the road so it's better lighting and everything. So the first thing that I want to say is, thank you for being here so early with
You're welcome.
me.
You're welcome.
Awesome.
And thanks for your time as well. I mean,
thank you.
busy lady.
Well, I'm sure I'm not as busy as you, but thanks. So my platform is about education first because I don't like to talk on things unless everyone kind of majority knows what's going on. So at the start of this conversation, I actually want to ask about what is the delegate, what is the delegates conference, and just the overall general idea of it.
Okay. So the delegates are a group of people who have the awesome responsibility of selecting the party leader, the party deputy leader, the party executive. They typically serve for a year between conferences, and they come from each of the constituencies, PLP branches across the island. So there are 36 branches, and the number of delegates allotted to each branch is a function of the number of members it has.
The number of delegates allotted to each branch is a function of the number of delegates. Can you make that simpler, like I'm 10 years old?
Sure. So for every 20 members or part of, you get one delegate.
Okay.
So if you have 21 members, you get two. One for the first 20 and one for the one that's part of 20.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
If you get 40, you get two. If you get 41, it's one for the first 20, one for the second 20, and the remaining one of the 41 is a part of 20, so you get one for that person as well. So depending on the size of your branch, it determines how many delegates you have.
Okay.
So this year, I'm told there are 124 delegates that come from the branches, the 36 branches, and then there's a delegate assigned to the Women's Caucus and a delegate assigned to the Youth Caucus.
Yes.
And then members of Parliament, MPs, also get an opportunity to vote in the leadership contests. So there are 30 members of Parliament.
Right. I thought it was only the delegates that vote for the leader.
No, the MPs also vote for the leader.
But not at the delegates conference.
At the conference they do.
Oh, they do as well?
Yes.
Okay, did not know that. Right. So go on. So how do they get picked anyway, the delegates?
So the branches meet and they decide amongst themselves who among them will serve as a delegate. And there's also people who are selected as alternates. So in as much as a delegate at the conference is not available to participate, then an alternate will step in and fulfill the role of the delegate who couldn't participate.
Do you know if that alternate would be voting on behalf of a person that just couldn't go in, so they would have their same vote, or could they have a different vote?
I think it depends on the circumstances. I think some branches take the view that our position is this, and therefore we vote as a block on that position. And other branches take the position that the delegate has the responsibility for making a vote, and that delegate votes how they see fit. It depends on what is the arrangement between the delegates for any constituency.
All right, so final question about delegates is, so how many people are going to be voting in this delegates conference, including the MPs as well as the delegates? Do you know the number?
About 152 people.
152 people. Okay. All right, so now that we've covered the basics of it and we understand now delegate conference and what they do and how many are there to vote for you, let's start with these 21 questions.
Okay.
All right, so the first one. Explain to me as if I was a 10-year-old, if on October 20th the delegates vote in favor of you to become the leader of the PLP, what happens next?
Well, on the morning of the 21st, a letter will be delivered, I'm told a letter will be delivered to Government House on the night of the 20th, advising the governor of the change in the leadership of the Progressive Labour Party. In the PLP, the person who is elected as party leader when the PLP has the majority in the House of Assembly becomes the Premier. And so the next morning, there's an audience with the governor where the person who has been, if it's me, I will be sworn in as Bermuda's next Premier.
Wow. That's how it works. Cool. Okay. What is your favorite TV show or movie?
My favorite movie is something that I enjoy watching with my wife. It's a little bit corny. It's Pretty Woman.
Really?
Yeah.
Pretty Woman.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Right, so let's keep walking. Some of these questions are like community questions. Some questions come from myself. This one is from the community. They ask, what happens if you do not win? Will the community not hear from you? And will you leave the PLP? What is the plan?
I have no plans to leave the PLP. Since the time that I resigned, I have taken some time for myself and for my family. And our kids are now all overseas in school, and it was important to me to take the time that I was off from work to kind of get them settled. I have put on hold my own kind of furthering of my professional career in favor of pursuing this opportunity. And inasmuch as I'm not successful, I will go back to reflecting on what I want to do next in a professional setting. I have no plans to leave the PLP.
And that leads me to my fourth question is, full transparency, why did you resign?
I spoke to that on March 25th. Our system of government, which is based on the Westminster system, requires that the cabinet act in concert. And if a minister cannot support a policy decision of the cabinet, that minister is duty bound to resign. And so there was a position taken that I couldn't, in my own good conscience, support. And so I had to step away. I'm also a person who believes in honoring your principles. And when I decided to become active in politics, it wasn't a decision that was mine alone. It was one that I talked to my wife about. And I've been married for 31 years now. My wife is my partner. We have been through my professional life for the most part together, and she made it very clear to me that she could not support me entering politics if my principles were going to be compromised in pursuit of my politics. So I have a deal with myself, but as importantly, I have a deal with my wife, that I'm going to do what I believe to be right, and if I can't support something that I don't agree with, then I have to kind of take a stand and say, I can't continue in that space. So it's as simple as that. It's a point of principle, and that was the reason.
I'll follow up to that. I mean, what would you say to someone who may just think that you just quit? Would you consider that as quitting?
No. This decision wasn't reached as an impulse. It had been percolating for a while, and I worked to try to convince people that the proposed course of action was not in the best interest of the country. I have 3 decades of experience as a financier. This issue related directly to my area of expertise, and you can advise a client on an issue. The client ultimately chooses to take advice or not. If you believe the client is taking bad advice, you sometimes have to step away.
Okay. And on my sixth question, kind of following up to what you said back there, how did you propose to your wife?
Well, we had been going out for about 9 years at that point. We're high school sweethearts. We met at high school at Berkeley. We had lived apart. I had gone to school in Atlanta. She then went to school in North Carolina. So most of our courtship was long distance. And
sorry, you said courtship. Sorry, I love that. Go on.
Yeah. I courted her. I mean, it's an old word. It's old-fashioned, but
I watched Bridgerton. I know.
I actually like the old-fashioned traditions, and so I was living in New Jersey, and Lisa had finished college, and she came up to New Jersey to spend some time with me, And we were joking around one day, and she said, well, I want to get married. And I said, well, good for you. Knowing good and well that later in the summer when I came in for cut match, I would propose. And so I actually played a really, really bad joke and told her that I wasn't ready to get married, but I was on my knee asking her to marry me.
You gotta explain that a little bit further, because I don't think that joke is very funny right now.
Well, I think about it because these moments are supposed to be memorable for other reasons, and it was kind of corny and it fell flat. But we were having a discussion, and we were sitting in my mother's living room, and she was sitting on the couch. I was on the floor, and we were talking about the concept of getting married. And I said, well, I don't think I'm ready to get married. And it was me deadpanning it, but all the while I had managed to get up from the floor, from sitting into a kneeling position. And she looked at me, and I was like, well, I'm just joking. And I said, will you marry me? And she looked at me like surprised, and she said yes.
You had the ring?
We decided not to get an engagement ring.
Really?
Yeah.
We decided?
We decided.
It was a mutual decision?
No, we decided. I happen to be married to a really, really practical person. Lisa had known that my plans were to go back to school. And I wanted to go to either Harvard Business School, the Wharton Business School, or Columbia Business School. All of those places are incredibly expensive. And her thinking was, it's better for us to save the money and spend it on getting education than getting a ring in the moment. And so what she said to me is, all I want for now when we get married is a very simple gold band. So when we got married back in 1991, we exchanged very simple gold bands. My wife doesn't wear a simple gold band anymore. Because over time we were able to afford something a little bit more lavish, and so she has a more conventional set of engagement and wedding rings. But we did it our own way, and it was based on our circumstances at the time, and it just kind of shows kind of how we think about things. We are.
You think about the future.
All the time.
I like that, because even just that story, because you said that you like traditional things, but you still knew when to make things make sense. Like, if you can't afford this right now and your goals are on something else, you have to make some sacrifices, and you're lucky to have a partner that has that same amount of discipline and practicality.
Our lives have been about sacrifice. I mean, both of us have, not had an easy time of it. My wife lost her mother when she was 11, her dad when she was 16, and her mother's younger sister took Lisa and her sister Tina in as her own. She was an unmarried woman, and she raised the girls as if they were her own children. And they struggled, but like my mom and my dad said, education is important. Her aunt also espoused those same values, and so we've come a long way, both of us. And that's what makes it so special, is because there was nothing. There was nothing other than idea and ambition and a willingness to work really hard. And we've been a team. And it's been interesting because for most of our marriage, my wife has been either a stay-at-home wife or a stay-at-home mom. And people would often ask, well, what does she do all day? I said, I don't know, why don't you ask her? Because it isn't my job that she needs to be running around the house kind of being the housekeeper. I mean, she's a woman who's educated, and she can do what she wants. And my goal for my wife has always been to be able to provide for her to do whatever she wants. If she wants to work outside the home, great. If she wants to be a stay-at-home mom, great. If she wants to open a business, great. I wanted to be the husband to support whatever her dreams were.
In what ways do you differ, or that you think you can improve as Premier, other than David Burt?
I don't see this as being a Curtis versus David situation. I see this as being me putting myself forward to lead Bermuda at a time when we have a number of profound issues. and there seems to be, as far as I can tell, a desire for change. Change in the way that we do things, change in the way we lead, change in how we lead. And I put my hand up to say that I'd like to be considered to do that. Throughout my career, what I've been known to do is what I figured out actually is, while my discipline is in finance, the thing that I really love doing is solving problems. It's bringing people together and trying to figure out solutions to complex problems. And so how I would see myself leading is in the same way that I've kind of carried myself over the course of the last 3 decades, working with people to identify problems and then identifying practical solutions that have real impacts.
And obviously people are trying to pin you guys against each other, but like, can I ask, what is your personal relationship with David Burt?
We were very, very friendly. I mean, I met David back in, I think it might have been 2010, when he was Junior Minister of Finance and I was working at the bank running the treasury function, and we were trying to improve our relationship with the government from a banking perspective. And we continued as friends over the course of that time, and it led to him asking me in 2017 to consider running in the general election. We weren't ready as a family for that, so we declined. And in 2018, in late 2017, my wife and I decided that it was something that we would consider doing, and we advised him, and then I ran in the by-election in 2018 and was appointed Minister of Finance in later that year. I think we obviously are competing for the same job, and I think that probably, not unsurprisingly, creates some degree of tension. But we're cordial.
Yeah. All right, next question. Who was your cartoon character crush growing up, and why?
That's a really interesting question. I don't recall having a cartoon character crush.
Smiling, right?
I'm sitting here thinking about it. I'm thinking of like kind of popular movies and like Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I'm thinking about that one, and I'm like, no, that wasn't it either. I don't remember having one, to be honest with you.
I feel like you're not telling me the truth.
No,
full transparency here.
It's full transparency.
Okay, no cartoon character.
Sometimes the right answer is you don't have an answer.
I feel like now I have to ask another question because that one doesn't count.
That's fine. So it'll be 22 questions then.
What song can you sing word for word?
I can give you an answer to that as long as I don't have to sing the song.
So diplomatic.
One of my favorite recording artists is Luther Vandross, and he has a song. That was not nice, Maya.
What?
Are you suggesting that your grandma and I are the same age?
I'm sorry. No, I'm saying. You like music?
Never Too Much by Luther Vandross, which is really a fantastic kind of upbeat kind of love song.
I know it well. I think I know that one word for word as well. Come on, Curtis, give us a note.
No, I am good at a lot of things. Singing is not one of them.
Okay, how about you just tell me the lyrics then, if you know word for word. You don't have to sing it, just lyrics.
Okay, I can talk about one of the verses. Woke up today, looked at your picture just to get me started. I called you up, but you weren't home when I was brokenhearted. Hung up the phone, can't be too late, the boss is so demanding. Opened the door, to my surprise there you were standing. Who needs to go to work to hustle for another dollar? I'd rather be with you because you make my heart scream and holler. Love is and this is the part where I kind of mix it up. Love is a gamble, but I'm so glad I'm winning. Something, this is only the beginning.
Okay. Man, I really thought I was going to get you in a flow, but you're right. Okay, so the PLP, if I'm not mistaken, the PLP was actually initiated in its time for like wanting to actually lead the race on independence in Bermuda and try to make us go there. So what is your stance on independence? Do you still want to, follow that initiative for the PLP if you were elected as Premier?
I support independence. I think it's an important journey for the country. The questions that I have about independence revolve around, do our people know what independence actually is? And I'm not talking about the political definition of independence, I mean, kind of going off from your parents and kind of functioning on your own. But there are practical things that have to be considered as well. You know, we become responsible for certain activities that we heretofore have not been responsible for. Embassies, national security. And so I think that there is an education process that actually needs to go on for the populace, so that when people, because this is ultimately a decision of the, I believe, of the people, when people are asked to make this decision, yes or no, through a referendum, they should make it based on being informed. And so I think that we as a government, whether it's this administration or any other administration, has an obligation to start a process of educating people around independence and what it actually means for them.
And follow up to that, when are we actually going to start getting some actual teaching of how Parliament and government works inside the schools? Is that something you want to like hold as that initiative? Because I'm sure a lot of people would love to learn how it actually operates inside the system. We don't learn that in school. What do you guys say?
I'm older than you, but I can recall a time when I was in school, we had a class called civics. And the point of civics was to help us to understand how our local government actually worked. I'm not sure if that is still in the curriculum. I know that there's been a lot of energy around Bermuda history, and I would, in my own mind, think that Bermuda civics would be part of any curriculum on Bermuda history. And I think it's important, because if you don't know who you are, if you don't know where you've come from, if you don't know what the experience has been of your people, then that's a glaring gap.
What is the craziest rumor you've ever heard about yourself?
That I was born rich.
Would you update the immigration laws to welcome more expat workers?
The short answer is yes. But I think that when you update the immigration laws, you have to acknowledge the difficulty that immigration as an issue has caused to so many people in Bermuda. We are in a really interesting place demographically, where we have increasing number of people getting older and a declining birth rate. And so a lot of the things that we do in government, our pension systems, even our health insurance systems, relies upon healthy young people contributing to kind of help to pay for folks who are getting older and getting sicklier. If we have fewer young people, then that puts a strain on the government's ability to be able to kind of fund or pay for benefits for people who are older. The reality is that no one comes out of the womb at 25 years old. You know, you got to be a baby, and then you got to be a toddler and an infant, and then you work your way through. And so we have a real problem in terms of a need for resources who can actually work and contribute. But you can't do anything in that space until you first acknowledge the pain, the real pain that has been caused by an immigration system that so many people believe has been unfair to them. You know, I am the beneficiary of a very open and liberal immigration policy. I went to school in the United States, and then I was allowed to stay, and I worked there for 2.5 decades. And it was through those work experiences that I'm now able to come back and to contribute in a meaningful way. So I see the value in immigration. I also see the value from an economic perspective, getting people employed and working. But it has to be a system where it's fair to the people who were born in the country. We don't want to have a situation where Bermudians continue to feel disenfranchised. When I first got into politics as Minister of Finance in November of 2018, I attended a forum in Hamilton Princess put on by KPMG to discuss the topic of economic substance. And the last question from the audience that was asked to me was, what do you think about immigration? And I was like, I thought I'd gotten a clean sweep of this forum without talking about anything controversial. And my response was, Bermuda, by any stretch of the imagination, is viewed as an economic miracle. And there are lots of people who have benefited from that miracle, but a lot of them don't look like us. And that's the cause of real pain. And if people are benefiting from all that's great in Bermuda, it should be all the people of Bermuda.
And follow up to that would be, what will you do to get us out of debt? And what is your thoughts on the proposed minimum wage?
With respect to getting us out of debt, the strategy that we employed when I was Minister of Finance was to stop borrowing, unless we absolutely had to. We then said we're going to start to refinance the maturing debt at interest rates that are lower than was currently on the existing debt, and we were successful in doing that. We did run into a problem with Morgan's Point, so we had to borrow $200 million for that. And then we went and borrowed some money to support the island during the course of the pandemic. And I don't regret those decisions because they were the right decisions. In the first instance, the government had a legal obligation to honor guarantees. And if you don't honor your legal obligations, what you will find is that people will not lend you money. People will take the view, I cannot take them at their word, therefore we should not work with them. Okay. On the COVID front, no one as a government wants to see their people suffering. And so we borrowed money to ensure that people could have money to provide for themselves. That was the right decision, and I don't think that anyone, irrespective of your politics, disagrees with the government having taken those steps because it was the right thing to do. Morning, how you doing? So I think, how do we get out of debt? We have to continue to look at ways of stimulating growth in the economy. We have to grow revenue. We have to keep a keen eye on cost because we have to create circumstances where our revenues actually exceed our expenses. And for much of the last 2 decades, the government's revenue has actually been less than its expenses. And that's why the amount of debt has accumulated. The only way to reverse that is to change the dynamic where the revenue actually exceeds the expenses and you start to generate surpluses. And we were on our way. I mean, my first budget, which created some issues in the House of Assembly by the opposition, had projected about a $7 million surplus, which would have been the first surplus that we would have had at the time in about 16 years. We missed the mark because we ended up borrowing money and spending money on advisors for Morgan's Point.
Was that really a necessity? Was that part of a legal deal that we had to do?
Well, we had obligations of about $170+ million to pay to the people who had lent the project money. Mm-hmm. And then we had to hire advisors, legal and otherwise, to help us develop strategies on getting our money back. So it was required. We had to do it.
So funny how the world works. You have to spend money to help you get money back.
That's right.
So, the next question was, what was your thoughts on the proposed minimum wage?
I think the minimum wage is a good initiative. I have some concerns because I think we need to be sure that we are fully consultative with the stakeholders who will have to bear the cost of it. Because there's no policy action that doesn't have a reaction. And one of the outcomes of this policy is that there will be certain people who make more money, and that's great. But the other thing is there'll be other people who have an increased cost. And let's assume a grocery store, for instance, just by way of just an example. They now have to pay their cashiers more money because the minimum wage, their salaries may be less than the minimum wage. If they have to increase their salaries, then they're going to look to figure out, well, how do I keep my bottom line from going down because of the increased expense? Do I have fewer workers or do I increase my prices? And so there are potential responses that affected stakeholders can have to a minimum wage, which could result in increased prices, giving rise to increasing the minimum wage, and it becomes kind of circular. So these things need to be thought through, and I think broad consultation is really, really, really important because government actions don't happen in isolation. There are usually impacts of them, and you want to be sure to understand the impacts, and if they're potentially going to be negative impacts, and not every policy is fully positive, but you want to minimize the extent of any negative fallout.
Well, follow up to that, when you guys do consultations in Bermuda, do you know the number of how many people actually participate? Because I don't feel like it's many people that actually go on the gov.bm and do the little forms and actually participate in giving you guys feedback? Do you guys get many?
I think many people feel the way you feel. I think that I will accept that we need to do a better job of our consultation process. There are people who feel sometimes when being asked to be part of a consultation process that the answer has already been determined, and that the exercise is intended to check a box as opposed to really elicit people's views on issues with a view towards helping to shape the solution.
Well, next question, in terms of like talking to people and getting people to give their opinions, why are you not on social media?
When I got into politics, my objective was to be the Minister of Finance because I really thought I could add value to the country based on given my experience. And the thrill for me is actually the work. I am not particularly good at promoting myself, and it is a gap. I know that I probably should do more of it, but when I was Minister of Finance, we were dealing with a number of really serious issues, and I didn't have a person who I could say, help me with social media. We were working on dealing with the country's challenges. I suppose I could have asked my 20-year-old, but I suspect that what he would have produced for social media and what I would have wanted would have been kind of chalk and cheese. And so I just have never been that way. And then from a personal standpoint, as a public person, I have a private life, and I like to keep that part of my life kind of simple. And so you won't see a whole lot of stuff on social media, me post it with my children or my wife. You might see an occasional thing, but by and large, I'm a public person who's very private.
It seems to be like, I don't want to say caricature, but like many people become leaders. I don't know why we have this need to see them like kissing babies or something, or like this type of corny type of photo shoots and photo ops and stuff. So I get that part about social media because some people don't really know how it's supposed to be ran, especially in the position that we are. And again, it's a thing that the younger generation kind of came up with and rolled with, and the older generation is trying to catch up on and understand as well. So, but because it's for like young people, do you see the potential in it? Do you see maybe sometime down the line you might use it, but maybe in a more strategic way and not so corny?
I think there's room for improvement, and I would say that I would be guided by having a social media presence that is intended to be a vehicle for communicating with people authentically. Because I think authenticity is really important, and I am a politician who's been described as being the anti-politician politician. Right? It's about for me, it's about the work. Mm-hmm. And if the social media is a way of informing the broader population on the work, I'm all for it.
I'll give one piece of advice, because sometimes like politicians don't know what to post, or they post things to me that just seem like, hey, this is like, I don't need to see your face every day. I don't need to know, sorry, what you ate for lunch or whatever. Like sometimes it's just things that don't make sense. So my advice to you, because of how you stand and how you just want to be direct, I would honestly, you don't even have to share your face. If you post your everyday kind of schedule, like what you're doing in time frames, so people know that you're doing stuff, that's all you don't even have to put a caption. Just like Thursday, September 27th, whatever. That's probably not even the right date. But this is my to-do list for the day. And that's really it. You don't even need to put your face on it or nothing, but you have a record there that shows people he's working. And that's really all we need. Okay. I think some people get too into the fact that they need to put their face and talk and all that there. That's nice on occasion, but after a while, there's something that former Premier Alex Scott once said to me. He said, like, if he had social media back in his day, he wouldn't use it the way it's being used right now, because seeing the Premier's face every single day kind of makes it seem like it's no longer important whenever he shows up.
Yeah.
So
you run the risk of kind of diluting the brand, right? That's the kind of language that you guys would use. Yeah.
Yes, the brand, yes.
Oversaturation.
Mm-hmm. Too much can be, honestly, too much. And then we start thinking that, it's not important whenever you show up.
Yep.
And you have to remember that too. It's like when I see your face as a leader of Bermuda, I need to know that it's important and you tap in. I shouldn't see your face and then want to close the app because it's like, well,
Him again.
he's always on here. He's obviously not saying anything too, like, strenuous. So yeah, so it does. There's still a balance that needs to be worked on. Obviously, social media is still new to most people, but yeah, that's something that I've learned throughout the years. Right here.
So part of my chivalry thing is I'm supposed to be walking on the outside. So.
I know you messed up in the beginning.
I know.
I didn't say
yeah.
so.
I was just trying to go with it.
Okay, so what is your stance on making more funding available for creators and their project endeavors?
One of the things that I think we have gotten smarter about as time has gone on, because when I was a kid, it was everybody should go to college. Everybody. And I think what we've learned over time is that everybody isn't built for college. And everybody doesn't need to be a teacher or a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant. That there are other careers that are very fulfilling, where people can have very fulsome professional lives that are different. We become a better country when we have diversity, and not just in terms of kind of what people look like, but also what they do. And if there are opportunities for us to encourage people in the creative space, which is a big space, we should be doing more about that kind of stuff. So I'm open to more funding for exploring, for those who want to explore careers in fields that are considered non-traditional. And I think non-traditional is a word for the moment. I think as time goes on, those things that are non-traditional, and you guys are kind of, media content people, right? And I can tell you that when I was coming up in high school, doing what you guys are doing, I mean, this is ballsy stuff. Because I was kind of very focused and the boundaries were very clear. I think it's great.
Ballsy, eh? Just for the record, I did go to university. I'm just saying.
I think it's about deciding that you're going to chart your own path. I think the going to school is the great foundation, but does it have to be university if that's not where you're inclined? I think some people trade school. Like, we have 3 children. Our oldest one is 20. He didn't do the traditional route. At 16, he didn't want to be in high school anymore. And so we reluctantly kind of supported him. It went against everything that was instinctively right for us. He's now 20. He has his high school equivalency certificate. He is enrolled in community college in Alabama. And we're so happy and so proud of him for kind of finding his way. Our younger son, who's 18, did it the way that his dad did it. So he's gone. I went to Morehouse College. My 18-year-old is a freshman at Morehouse College. Our daughter, who's a bit of a hybrid between her brothers, she's off in school. She's a very talented athlete. She's Bermuda's under 15 girls national champion in the 2 and 400 meters. And at 14 years old, she got a silver medal in the 4x400 meter under 17 girls relay. Elise Dickinson.
Okay, Elise.
All right. She wants to be an Olympian. And so we're supporting that, even though my wife and I both very traditional in terms of, well, you need to go to school, you need to go to school, you need to go to college. So the way we were able to kind of bridge that gap, we found a really good school. It's a pre-college boarding school, pre-college prep boarding school. It has a really, really rigorous academic program and a phenomenal athletic program. Because, being a finance guy and being a guy who worries about risk, I said, what happens if you get injured and you can't continue that goal? You got to have something to fall back on. And so we've been able to kind of architect the right solution that's right for her, that kind of gets her where she wants to be, but also satisfies us as parents that, she'll be fine. Because at some point, children grow up and they go off and do their own thing. And we want to make sure they have the tools to be able to survive on their own.
I just want to say how progressive actually you guys' parenting style is, because personally I'm someone who doesn't want kids, but I couldn't even imagine wanting to take my 16-year-old out of high school just because he said that he doesn't want to do it anymore or has a different plan for himself. That's a bold thing to do, and to just trust your children and to guide them along the way.
It wasn't progressive because we were trying to be cutting edge. it was a thing that we needed to do in order to preserve our family. We had gotten to a place where we had tried a whole range of things. They weren't working. And so I said, let's hit pause. Let's hit pause. He's tired. We're tired. The other two are tired, because even if you have one kid who is going through something, the impact of that isn't isolated to just that child.
Right.
It affects the entire family unit. And so, we struggled with it. We're so happy that he has come out on the other side of it, a stronger, more assured. I mean, we talk, he calls me every day. We talk every day. And it is wonderful to see the young man that he is becoming. Especially with the history in my mind of kind of what it took to get us here.
Are you and MP Ming running for your leadership positions together?
MP Ming and I, well, the process, I'm not sure if it allows for a formal kind of ticket, but MP Ming and I are aligned in our views that there's a need for change. And so we are campaigning together, we're working together as best we can on our respective campaigns.
So what's the plan? What happens if, let's say, she wins for deputy and you don't win for leader? What's going to happen next?
MP Ming and I have a relationship that kind of predates kind of our involvement in politics. I worked at Butterfield Bank for 13 years. MP Ming still works there. We've been friends. I would see that we would continue to be friends and try to find ways of common interest and ways to work together. That shouldn't change.
How did you vote in the case of same-sex marriage?
In the House of Assembly, or in the referendum that was had?
Let's say both.
In the referendum, I voted in support, and I don't believe I was in the House of Assembly when that vote was taken. But I am, a person who has lived in New York, lived in London, lived in what I would consider to be progressive environments. And my own view is, as someone who's been extraordinarily fortunate in my own personal relationship, that people should be allowed to choose for themselves.
So who was your mentor growing up, and what's a core memory that you have of something that they may have told you?
I have a couple of different mentors at various stages in my life. I mean, my mother obviously was really, really important, and I think she set the tone for my hard work and my wanting to succeed. And part of it was for myself, but also part of it was for her, because when she had me back in 1965, if you were pregnant in high school, you couldn't go to school. So she had to drop out of school in order to have me. My dad as well, my dad has always been an advocate for kind of, commitment to your goals and to working hard. And as life has gone on, there have been various people who have kind of, I think, God has kind of put in your way to kind of help to mold you. If I fast forward a few years and I think about my college years, I was living in Atlanta with my aunt and my uncle. I was living off campus, and I used to have to walk from their home to the bus stop to get the bus to go to school. And one day I was walking, and one of our neighbors asked me did I want to ride to the bus stop. And it was a black gentleman, and he had a big old Mercedes, and I said fine, I can always get out of the car, jump out of the car. And he ended up taking me all the way to school. And I said to him before I got out of the car, he worked at the Equitable, I said, is there any way that I can get a job at the Equitable? I was a senior at Morehouse, getting ready to graduate in about 5 to 6 months. And he said, well, why don't you go and see this person on campus, the dean of our chapel. It turned out that the president and CEO of the Equitable was on the board of trustees of Morehouse, and he wanted to get some Morehouse students into the Equitable Management Training Program. So I went through a process of actually going to see this gentleman whose name is Collier Sinclair, and he helped to advise me, coach me on what was going to be required of me when I went to New York for my interviews. And we stayed in touch, and he introduced this tradition that we now do in our family quite a bit, and it's kind of funny. But he would always, when we were partying, he would always embrace. And the first time he did it, I was like a board. And as we got to know each other, it became more natural. And my dad was in New York one day for a visit, and he was leaving to go to the airport, and he was getting on these buses that take you from central Manhattan to Kennedy. And as he was getting the bus, I said, "Hey, Dad." He turned around, like, I hugged him, and his reaction to the hug was the same as mine was when Mr. St. Clair hugged me for the first time. And now our tradition in our family is we hug. My children and I do it all the time. My dad and I, my brother and I, we do it. My sisters, it's kind of our thing. So Collier St. Clair, for his authenticity and his willingness to kind of shed what were very masculine kind of views on how men are supposed to behave. We embraced each other because we cared for each other. And then there's a guy I work with who is a white gentleman who I worked for as a trainee, and I spent 9 months with him, even though the assignment was supposed to be for 6 months. We worked well together. I moved on through other training assignments, and then after finishing the program, I came back to work for him. And lots of coaching, lots of mentoring, and I told him that I wanted to go back to business school, but it was going to be really tough for me to be able to afford it. And he structured a program, a pilot program for management trainees to go back to business school, any school that you wanted to go to. The company would pay for it, and in return, you'd come back to work for them once you had finished. That program was a pilot program. It had one person participate in it. That was me. And so my ability to go to graduate school to get substantial amounts of funding, it came from my employer. And there have been folks along the way, along the way who I look at as folks who I emulate in terms of their leadership styles, the way that they lead with compassion, because none of us are perfect, and I think you take things from people who you see, and you try to incorporate them into the kind of the way that you work, the way that you live, and hopefully you're a better person for it.
Yeah. That just actually struck up a core memory for me. I remember joining it was like a webinar, and this lady was moderating the event, and it's something that now I do whenever I moderate, but she made everyone, this was online, during COVID, she made everyone close their eyes, and then she repeated some words, and we could deep breath and say them back, and it was just like, everyone here wants to see me succeed. Nobody here wants to wish me ill will. Just things like that, like good positive mantras to just remind us that we're all human.
Yep.
And I love incorporating that into now my style of moderating, because I think it really does calm people down and makes them open to more questions as well. Just knowing that, again, like I said, nobody's perfect, but we're all just here trying to learn and be better people every day. What are the areas you think you need to consult and get the most advice in if you become Premier?
You know, I was asked a question at a meeting among some of the constituency delegates a few weeks ago, actually a few days ago. They asked me, was I planning on keeping the finance ministry if I am successful? And I said yes. And so there's a series of other cabinet ministries that are going to need other ministers. I would consult on all of those. One of the things that I believe makes you an effective leader is the ability to recognize your strengths, understand what you know and what you don't know, and then to kind of build a team to help you to fill those gaps. And so I would envisage that in all the other ministries in the government, should I be leading an administration, I would be consulting with either ministers or experts in those areas to ensure that the solutions that we deliver as a government are effective and actually make sense.
What books are you reading right now?
I have probably about 8 books on my night table. I'm not actively reading any of them because I'm just a little bit busy these days. but they range in genre from management or leadership books to fiction, to there's one I think by Stanley McChrystal talking about Make Up Your Bed, which I think is it's an inspirational book for parents to read in terms of kind of instilling kind of discipline and some good values in your children. But it's a wide range of books. And then I had a birthday at the end of August, and so one of my favorite authors to read is the guy named David Balducci, and my stepmother bought me a book for my birthday, so that's on the night table as well. And I'm trying to find a way to kind of do some more reading, because I think it's a good way to relax and have a little bit of time for yourself.
Things are a little stressful right now, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, they're busy. I mean, I've got, our kids went off to school, and this is the first time that all three of them have been gone. So for the first time in 2 decades, we are without a child in the house. And that's different, and it takes a little getting used to. And so in August, because my wife's passport was caught up in the passport situation, she couldn't travel. So I became the parent to take the kids to school. And
that must have been so sad.
It's, you never know until you know. And it is, the whole organizational part of getting your children settled in somewhere new, like school, it's a lot of work. And so I took our younger son in the first week of August, August the 7th, and our oldest son, who lives in Alabama, but he had driven his car to Atlanta to come over for cotton match, so he went with us. He helped to get John settled, and then I came back on the 13th, and on the 15th I turned around again to take our daughter to Florida, and I didn't have any help, and she's in a suburb of Orlando, and Orlando is not Atlanta. So, an expectation of kind of being able to get things like Ubers, so you can kind of get back and forth between the stores that, like Target and the uniform store.
Yeah.
They weren't as plentiful as they were in Atlanta, so it created a different dynamic. So I ended up renting a car, and we made out fine, but it was stressful.
Okay, I know I said that was my last question, but I got 2 more. Okay, what was the most embarrassing memory of middle school for you?
So what's most embarrassing is that when I was in school, there was no such thing as middle school. So it just ages me.
I forgot about that point. Okay, most embarrassing school memory then. In Bermuda.
I think for me, so I was a pretty compliant child, and you think you're clever sometimes, and there were very strict rules on school uniforms, and there were strict rules that you could not wear docksiders to school.
What? That's like the main thing everyone wears now.
Yeah. And so I went to my godfather and had him buy me docksiders to wear to school. And the school took them from me, and then called my father, who had no knowledge that I had gone out to my godfather. And so there was the embarrassment of having the shoes taken from me, and then there was the shame of upsetting my dad.
Hang on, so wait, did the school take the shoes from you at the end of the day or at the beginning of the day?
They took them from me, and then, I can't remember the time of the day they took them, but they took them from me and then they gave them back to my dad.
So at one point of the day, were you like not wearing shoes?
I might have been wearing sneakers. It might have been a gym day.
Okay, so at least you said things really steep. Okay, and what was I going to end this on? What is a promise, if you're a guy who makes promises, which I think you are, what's your promise that you want to make to the people of Bermuda?
That if elected to lead the PLP and to lead the country, I'm going to work my level best to move this country forward.
Awesome. And what are you wearing for us right now? Because I can't get over these shorts and socks. I can't not end this interview.
Well, these are compression socks that I wear for when I run. And these are Nike running shoes. and then I have some gym clothes on.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And my question that I have is, do you think when it comes in terms of this new shift in education, have we truly prepared our people for it?
The sense I get from people who I talk to is that we haven't. And I'm not sure if that is perception or reality, but perception becomes reality. I think it's really important for leaders to, in the space of education, over-communicate. Because I think all of us generally accept that if education is a part of building a house, it is the foundation. And you want to be sure that you've got the best, the strongest, the most effective foundation on which people are actually building their lives. And I would err on the side of over-communicating than not. I think education is a very sensitive topic, and it leads into so many other things. And so the ability for Bermudian children to fully participate in this economic miracle called Bermuda is dependent on them having a really strong foundation educationally. And so it kind of feeds into other parts of our existence. And so it's so important. I also think people are concerned that we don't give things enough of a chance to kind of work before we change them up. And I spent 5 years as the chair of the Board of Education, and the joke I used to have is that I was the continuity during that time because we had 6 ministers in my 5 years. We had a couple of commissioners and we had a couple of acting commissioners, and so I was the one who was the constant. That's changed now, and I'm hopeful that the reforms that are put into place are embraced and that we give them a chance to work.
Exactly. It's crazy that you say that because I remember when I did.
Yeah, laces untied.
I know they've been untied for a while, but it's okay. These are on the bronze, so that they stay very soft, like tied up.
Bronze.
No, I can recall in high school in Cedar Bridge and on the Miss CBA pageant thing that I participated in. One of the questions was what was something that you would change in government or something. And I remember saying that in education they constantly keep changing up on us and treating us like guinea pigs, and they never keep anything the same for long enough for us to actually see if it's actually working. So I remember feeling that way, and I still feel that way today because I was like, in my sister's year, 2 years older than me, she didn't have GCSEs, and now I'm in S4 and we have GCSEs. Like this, it's kind of crazy how fast you guys have shifted it.
I think it's important to kind of constantly assess kind of how things are going, and then to tweak. And if you find that you're going way off track, then you might have to kind of say, hold on. But if you've done the work in the beginning, the foundational work, the risk of kind of having to make major shifts is substantially reduced. And I think when I was leading the Board of Education, we had to do a new strategy document. And the approach that had been done in the past was very top-down driven. And when the team came to me with recommendations, I said, no, we've done it that way time and time again. Let's try something different. Let's try to build this from the bottom up. And we'll have some top-down to it, but let's go and talk to people about what they want from their education system. Because people don't want to be told what to do. They want to feel as though they are important parts of the process. And so getting their feedback around what they find important helps inform kind of what the strategy should be.
Okay, all right. We're going to try to end this here, but I have one more question. Do you think that we should cut down on 36 constituencies? Like, is it too much?
I don't know. I mean, it's a lot of people. I think we should ask the people what they think about that.
Yeah. I'm getting the general consensus that it is too many people. Thank you. Awesome.
Okay. Cool.
Well, I had such a good time getting
Likewise.
to know you for
I did too.
real.
I did
nice.
too.